Hello, everyone, and welcome to our final Azure governance session, deployment acceleration, with which today we'll conclude the entire Azure governance series. As usual, we will start with the updates in the upcoming month and something, and then we'll go deeper into deployment acceleration. Part of the Azure Govern methodology, which is part of the cloud adoption framework. We'll do a quick recap a little bit later, and then we'll have some time for questions, answers, and hopefully some interesting discussion. We'll be interested to hear your experience as well. We'll share ours at the end. As usual, continuing with our introduction, my name is Nikolai Markov, and I've been in the IT industry for a little bit more than 20 years. My main focus recently is helping large organizations adopt the cloud and take all the benefits with it. Also trying to get some insight in the possibilities of integrating AI in the large organization and in general, working in multiple digital transformation during these 20 years of experience. So yeah.
Hi, everyone. As usual, I mean, this will be our 13th session. So we've introduced ourselves enough times, but as you can see, I have a similar background, and our goal is to help with the adoption of cloud technologies.
And yeah, talking more about the Microsoft Cloud services and bring you up to the speed with what's new in the cloud. Talking about what's new.
We've picked up some. I mean, this month was a bit slow in terms of updates, so we only have a handful of updates to share. On the Azure front, we have some updates on the Azure firewall, new capabilities as far as logs goes, and some updates on the Azure storage options. M365, some new information came to light about the M365 Copilot, specifically around licensing, which is interesting to mention. For the Power Platform, we have a new integration that has been enabled between the Power Platform and Sentinel, so you can manage your instance better in terms of security. And talking about security, we have new capabilities for reporting in Defender for Endpoint.
And also, we didn't include, but there were one new vulnerability found in Microsoft Teams.
Yeah. I purposely didn't mention.
Okay.
Okay, so Azure Firewall Structured Logs, basically they've enabled some options to allow, especially this will be familiar to security engineers who are used to using other vendors in terms of firewalls, and they've enabled some options to allow the creation and generation of structured logs, and unlike unstructured logs, which are basically free-form text, structured logs have a more consistent format. They can be parsed and analyzed by machines, so you can interpret this in another system that ingests logs. Maybe it could be it could be outside of Microsoft as well. And this is a more a better approach in terms of integrations. Also, the sheer number of logs has been expanded compared to what it was previously capable. So the screenshot is a bit small, but as you can see, the ones that are highlighted are the new ones, and the ones that are not selected are the previous options. So I think this would be they're trying to suit some audiences where people are still doubting the capabilities of Azure Firewall being a true enterprise solution compared to, let's say, a Palo Alto or something along these lines. So I think Microsoft at this point has created a very well-rounded product, and it's trying to do some secondary, in terms of the priority list of what needs to be implemented. They got to a point where they're kind of implementing some nice to haves in terms of the functionality, because I think generally Azure Firewall is a very good solution for securing your enterprise. It not only on the cloud front, but it can be used on other resources as well.
Absolutely. It's I've seen multiple implementation recently in very large organization, one of the largest organization worldwide, which heavily leveraged to Azure Firewall as central firewall solution, which of course complement greatly the web application firewall as well. Okay.
You want to take this one?
Sure. So just before the call, we had a discussion that, come on, why we have this one included here? Because my colleague took care of these updates. Because I thought that we discussed this multiple times. But so this year, actually, Microsoft is trying to catch up with AWS. So they brought the possibility of have immutable storage. In the slide it's not included, but also as immutable vaults. I played with both of these when they were in preview. In my understanding, recently the immutable vaults came out of preview, so they can be used now. This is a great solution for critical data when, especially for some compliance or specific law enforcement where you have to keep and retain the data. There's multiple tactics of and available in Azure. They done outstanding job, I would say, comparing to all other clouds and on-prem solution, providing multiple options to make sure that you have a lot of mechanism to prevent your data to be somehow deleted, corrupted, or in general lost. And immutable vaults and in general immutable storage are one of these options. I don't think it's that I have to go in details, but in general, it's once something is written to the storage or to the vault, it's backed up to the vault. You can't modify it. You can delete it. You can't modify it. You can only read it. It doesn't matter what kind of permissions you have, etc. The biggest caveat here is that there's some compliance standard, as you know, like GDPR, where people should be able to you should be able to remove their data. And in that case, these immutable blobs are not good option. So keep that in mind and make sure that you store only data which does not follow to this compliance standard. So use it carefully. As I said, it could be greatly combined with the deny policies, resource walks, which, to be honest, is general what we're doing as best practice from our experience. So yeah, great addition from Microsoft for this kind of.
And just to mention, this is a capability that has been around in all of the SaaS services that Microsoft provides. So part of SharePoint and the compliance portal. So we always had, well, not always, but in the last 5 years, we had the capability to do legal holds and time-based retention policies through tags and sensitivity labels. But this was based on the SaaS service because this is where usually people consume a lot of the files. But since a lot of different solutions are being built on Azure infrastructure directly, where blob storage is the central repository, they needed to implement some capability as far as retention goals and legal holds, which was missing. So it kind of catches up to what they already had as part of the compliance features in the SaaS services. And it's still not the same level of options that you get there, but it at least covers the basic principles like legal hold or retention policies.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, my favorite topic. I mean, I think in the last 3 sessions at least, Copilot is the one of the only thing that I talk about in the M365 front. And just so it happens that every month we get some new information or something they uncover, because even now I still don't have access to it. We previously talked how this is a very big thing for Microsoft in terms of just the sheer interest of all of the organizations that are part of the initial pilot. And even though this is a paid preview, keep in mind, this is the first time, at least in my work experience, where we have to pay to preview a product. We got some new information on what kind of licensing will be needed for organizations. So they uncovered that you need to have at least M365 E3 or E5 license, which is different from the Office 365 E3 or E5. It's a more expensive SKU that not everybody pays for. So this would be kind of the bare minimum where you start, and you have to pay on top of that for the actual license for Copilot, which can add up to a very significant amount, especially if you're going to bring in a lot of users. I'm expecting as AI gets adopted more into the organization and Microsoft finds a way to make it run with less resources in the cloud. I think this will probably be included in some of the SKUs going forward, maybe some E7 or something. But right now, it will be expensive to test, and still, it's something that a lot of the organizations are willing to pay for, because it could be a tremendous asset, especially for the people who are dealing mostly with data, who are creating materials, who are dealing with data, and some sort of data manipulation or management. They also uncovered some strict technical requirements and what you need to actually leverage Copilot, not only from a licensing perspective, but how you set up your organization in terms of the network connectivity. They published a separate document with guidance around network connectivity principles, and there's a specific tool inside of the portal where you can test out how are you currently connected, and what's the latency to all of these services, because the responses from Copilot are being influenced a lot by the latency and the network connectivity to the cloud. So this would be another thing that large organizations have to tackle and make sure that they have the necessary firewall rules in place to enable the connectivity, as well as the latency would be a major factor for this. It will also be available in Teams as an app, so you can use the Teams-based data. I read some analysis by a couple of people who are smarter than me when it comes to the specific things around M365, that there's some concern about oversharing as well, because the way Copilot works, when you give it a task, it obviously tries to get as much as data as possible to compile the answer. And the way it does it, actually goes into graph and figures out all of the information that you have access to in order to summarize the data set, and then based on that data set to come up with the response from the prompt. And this may uncover some issues that organizations may have with oversharing, because typically people have more access to data that they are allowed to. or may realize that they have access to. So this using Copilot may uncover some of these compliance problems just because it will show documents where people didn't realize they have access to. So this is another concern that probably needs to be tackled, and I'm guessing there will be some settings around how would you how can you govern this access overall? And yeah, it's going to be interesting. The one cool thing that I found about Copilot, it uses your own identity in Azure to provide the responses back. So it will only show the responses will be based only on the access that you have as an individual. So at least from that perspective, they figured it out. So this will be a very, I'm imagining this is a fairly complex system on the back end. So it's able to impersonate you in front of SharePoint and all the other services in order to come up with an answer. So we will see as soon as we get our hands on this. We'll come back with some responses. Maybe we'll use the other group to provide a demo maybe or something to showcase it.
Just quick addition from my side about the security copilot. We touched it a bit in the previous session, but it's even, I thought to say similar situation, but we believe that it's even behind the M365 copilot because what I've heard is that they just start onboarding some large organization in the States, so no one in Europe will have access to it. However, right now we have a very good use case of highly skilled qual team, which is looking for a way to implement Microsoft security suite like Sentinel, and in general to build a security operations center. And this is definitely something which may change totally the way of how security operations center fundamentally work, how they are built, what is required for them. So keep in mind that 100% will do something once we have access to the security copilot as well.
Any of the copilots here for that matter.
Yeah.
Talking about Sentinel, the Microsoft enabled I think it's still in preview technically, the ability to ingest Power Platform data inside of Sentinel. This was possible previously through different means like graph permissions, but now they actually have a real connector to the Power Platform, which right now the Power Platform becomes is one of the I would say it's one of the hottest SaaS services that Microsoft has overall inside of big organizations, because the kind of the time to market to get an application out. I see in my organization how people are choosing the Power Platform just because they can spin up an application very quickly instead of going through all the hassle, hiring contractors and building this in Azure or some other platform. You can actually leverage some of your existing staff to create something that you need, maybe a simple interface to a SharePoint site or another database. And since the licensing is probably already there present, you don't have to worry about a lot of the complexities of getting an application out usually. So with that and the kind of the exploding usage of the Power Platform, there's the usual issues with with platforms that are being used a lot is on the security vulnerabilities and overall risks that may be introduced with this, such as someone taking over your Power App, deleting your information. There are different areas where the Power Platform may be vulnerable. So they are allowing Sentinel to ingest logs and information from the Power Platform and build this into maybe a SOC team so they can govern this as an option. So I think generally it's a very good idea. Power Platform, we don't want to have it as a sort of a shadow IT service where people just create stuff without no oversight. Although we usually set some governance out there, but when it comes to the actual usage, it's hard to monitor it. And with Sentinel, which is the go-to tool for monitoring, security monitoring in the cloud overall in the Microsoft front, it's a great addition. So I think this would be one of the steps in a governance plan going forward if you want to deploy the Power Platform on an enterprise level. Last but not least, on the security front overall, like I said, this month is very sort of short on memorable news, at least something that I wanted to showcase. But I saw there is a new NEAT report that's being published and Defender for Endpoint that's more targeted towards stakeholders or executive leadership, where they want to have a reoccurring view on a monthly basis of how secure is the organization from an endpoint perspective. Just some risk scores are being incorporated from the Microsoft Secure Score portal, and overall just a compact view of what's going on. Very, very useful for presentations, I would say, when you want to just show where you are. It's easily consumable. It's not some complicated report or some Power BI dashboard that contains a lot of data. So I think this would be useful mainly for people who are not part of the IT organization or strictly in a leadership role where they need just the facts and maybe some action points that they can assign to their team. So generally, I think it's a good addition to the reporting mechanisms in the Defender.
Good stuff. So it's been like a nice journey for us to share with you the Azure governance framework. And we decided to start today's session with a quick recap and what is Azure governance, the governance methodology, where it sits in the overall cloud adoption journey. So as you know, it's Microsoft provided, and the other cloud providers as well provide pretty good and solid cloud adoption framework where you have all the different phases, which are pretty similar between the clouds. And of course, governed part is a crucial one, which actually start from the very beginning. So actually, after developing your cloud adoption strategy, starting with the planning, where you defined what you plan to migrate or modernize, how you're going to be in the landing zone, actually you have to start thinking about the governance as well. So thinking about governance, in general, it's simple. So you identified the risk for the business, you prepare some policies and compliance standards which will mitigate or adopt these risks, and you establish a process which will monitor these violations and your progress of removing these risks or some kind mitigate them. So we already covered the cost management discipline, where we shared some good practices, how you can maintain your cost, what kind of processes you can establish of maintaining your cost, optimizing your cost, make sure that your cost is predictable, controllable, because at the end, governance is governed methodology. So is really important in order, as you remember, in one of the cloud adoption framework early series, to make sure that it's meet the business expectation of the overall cloud adoption. So the first and most famous expectation, which usually is missed, is the cost. So cost management discipline is really important. And I forgot to mention, in general, we try to present this formal governed framework, part of the cloud adoption framework, but also combined with our own experience, our own point of view. So there's some mixture between the landing zone design, etc. We also talk about security and how you can establish a security baseline or security minimum viable product. What are really the base requirements that you can have in order to you have to implement in order to make sure that you have secure cloud platform which is compliant with your corporate standards. Important thing regarding the security is that Microsoft also help not only in security but in the other discipline as well, but especially for security. Security defaults came to my mind immediately. Security and identity. Microsoft is also helping us to bring these fundamentals and create as much as possible better, secure, cost efficiently scalable platform. So, for example, security defaults, which was one of the implementation. We also have a session about identity where we discussed this all really, and I would say the most oftenly missed part of the cloud platform for the enterprises and how you can leverage to the full potential what I would say the best identity provider and the industry standard like Azure AD and all of its functionality, the best practices, how you can establish everything to be around your identity boundaries compared to the traditional way of thinking, the physical networking boundaries. Of course, there's some, this methodology of layer defense in depth, so it's important everything to be combined. We also talked about the resource consistency in our previous session, where we touch multiple methods and best practices, how you can make sure that your environment is resilient, you have good backup and disaster recovery strategy. You are leveraging some of the best practices that I mentioned in the beginning regarding how you can protect your data and make sure that you can recover in event of failure. And today's the last discipline. It's time for covering the last discipline, which is deployment acceleration. So deployment acceleration discipline in the cloud adoption framework is strictly focused on the technology and in general in the technical side of the, let's say, of this, I would say, in this domain. So based on our experience, we see that there's also non-technical side. So at the end, we will be talking a little bit more about the non-technical side and how we can help organization to improve their deployment acceleration using both methods. So in general, deployment acceleration, its disciplines focuses on efficiently and timely delivery of solutions, maintaining high quality and compliance. So we've heard all about these three things: quality, speed, and cost. We have even in joke, I for sure in Bulgaria, but I guess in other countries as well, where you can have only two of these. But in general, in the past, the understanding about development and development life cycle is that you can have only quality or speed, and if you increase the speed, you are sacrificing the quality, and it is vice versa. So it's really this is one of the things that needs to we have to work hard in order to change in the mindset of in general in people, which got familiar with old way of working. But in our days, thanks to some of the tools which we'll discuss later, thanks to some of the practices, frameworks, we can have actually both of these. So I would say even including the cost. So having the tools like pipelines and automated deployments, we can have the same quality, the same consistent quality at a higher speed. And of course, at lower cost, because it will require less effort for us to do this deployment. Oops, sorry. I don't think that we discussed in the previous session, but recently I have interesting conversation with one of my colleagues who thought that actually improving the deployment speed and consistency, and in general the DevOps practices, will actually result in better performance, which is absolutely correct. So what I'm trying to say is that all of these disciplines is tightly connected to each other. So when you improve one of the disciplines, you actually have huge impact on the others as well. For example, in the resource consistency, if you have good monitoring, you're actually helping on security and identity. You're actually helping on the cost management because you're knowing if you're using these resources or not. And you're also helping on deployment acceleration because actually you know in which phases, how much time you're wasting, how much time is needed, if you need to have some better compute or something. So deployment acceleration also is impacting other discipline as well. And in general is boosting the overall efficiency and compliance, which has huge impact on the actually is part of the security and identity. Business benefits, I think it's pretty obvious, but first and foremost, it's reduced time to market. This is, I would say, the most important thing and the biggest driver in general for the cloud adoptions. One of the most important for the majority of the enterprises. Even the cost savings are not that important, but they are very important.
But harder to do.
And this is the harder to do.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, reduced time to market, it's kind of built into the cloud. You can leverage it directly.
Yeah. There's still organization which don't realize how important is that. They said we don't care about time to market, we deploy once per month, period. Yeah, anyway. Another benefit is improved quality because as we discussed, having this repeatability and consistency, make sure that we always have the same good quality. We'll see a little bit later how we can improve our quality in early stages and make sure that at the end we deliver qualified product. Increased efficiency, as we mentioned previously. Of course, when we have everything deployed repeatedly with same level of speed, will be much more efficient comparing to do everything manual each time. And at the end, we have better customer satisfaction. So we decided to follow more formal approach. So Microsoft is starting with the tooling, which is available for us in order to establish deployment acceleration discipline in our cloud platform and our organization. So in general, what the tools available for us is Azure policies, which we discussed multiple times. There's Azure pipelines. And yeah, we also have the GitHub action workflows. So Azure policies, I don't think that there's anyone who is not aware of their crucial role in the organization. but in general, these are services in Azure, which helps to enforce some standards which are adopted by our organization. Also, it could be some external compliance standards which we would like to have in our organization within our, and we can implement them by enforcing on auditing them in our cloud platform. These policies ensure that our resources and in general our cloud platform it stays compliant with our corporate standard or the standards that we decided that we will follow. So the good thing about the policies, they can be implemented as a code. They can be implemented at scale. They have audit capabilities, as I mentioned, so that we can use them just to monitor how our cloud platform is following our compliance standards. And of course, we can have the ability to not only implement policies which are pre-built by Microsoft, but also to create policies which are suitable and required only by our own internal policies that we have in our organization. So here, there's big dilemma between, I'm not sure if we touched this in security part, so we'll apologize if I repeat myself, but there's this dilemma of shall we implement our policies and maintain in our code, or we should leverage to the policies which are, for example, part of the Defender for Cloud, let's say the compliance section. And as a recommendation, based on our experience, we highly recommend to start with what is in the Defender for Cloud compliance sections. For that, I think you should have the CSPM license in place in order to leverage to that. But this will allow you to audit and enforce any of the most popular compliance standard, and even to build your own and import it in the compliance section of the Defender for Cloud, and only maintain the policies in your code which are outside of the policies which are already pre-built. Main reason for that, Microsoft will take care of everything new which is coming. These standards evolve pretty rapidly. So, for example, in NIST there currently is version 5. For ISO is second version. For Microsoft Security Benchmark, which is combination previously known as Azure Security Benchmark, which is combination of multiple compliance standard. Microsoft is taking care of that. You don't have to take care of this. Keep in mind that the resources change as well. Their capabilities changes as well. You have new capabilities even in some resources which are one of the very first, like virtual machines, like storage accounts, which may require some changes in your policies, and at some moment it may be hard to establish a process which will monitor who will take care and how often you should review all the policies, especially in large organization. The other tool for achieving streamlined deployment acceleration is Azure Pipelines. Again, I think this is pretty well-known product, which but yeah, in general allow you to automatically build, test, and deploy your code project. Integrates with most popular version control system like GitHub, Azure Repo, Bitbucket. The main benefits of it and key features is that it's provide continuous integration and continuous deployment capabilities, which there's of course other products which provide the same functionality, but this is the most popular and widely used one from Azure. There's some, they provide multi-stage deployment. You can divide your pipelines in jobs. You can have gates, and there's a lot of stuff which you can do. And in order to have pretty solid CI/CD process implemented by the Azure pipelines. If you're interested in that, there's a great course by Microsoft or even in Microsoft Learn for AZ400 exam. So you can dive in deeper in details and understand all the capability of Azure DevOps and Azure pipelines, which is also true for the next product, which is called GitHub Actions Workflows. Actually, it's pretty, I would say it has pretty similar and I would say almost the same purpose and functionalities. So Microsoft recently, it looks like that it's encouraging people to move away from Azure DevOps pipelines to GitHub Action Workflows, mainly because it has more seamless integration for project hosted in GitHub. So it's even there's some changes in Azure DevOps where right now you have to submit for new organization for parallel jobs, which previously was not the case. So they starting to move away and trying to. So the first, I would say, the first stage was they tried to encourage people which are not that, let's say, small companies, etc., to move away for the Azure DevOps, keeping this for large enterprises. But what I see right now is they also, even the large, highly regulated enterprises, they encourage them to move to GitHub Actions, again, because of more seamless integration with the GitHub.
And they have the GitHub Enterprise offering.
Yep, GitHub Enterprise offering. And also in general, GitHub has better and more modern user interface.
And more familiar to
the
open source.
Yeah, open source community. As we discussed recently, Microsoft really want to be recognized as the open source leader. And to be honest, in the recent year or two, they become the open source leader.
Yeah, they're the biggest contributor for open source in the world.
Yep.
Believe it or not.
What was the joke which we described? Microsoft was and what was the other company?
Facebook.
Facebook. Yeah. And remember the Google. We're discussing this more in the AI world, but in the past, Google was the more open source, and currently with the AI stuff, is actually the vice versa.
Yeah.
Microsoft is much more open source, especially with this Orca events, which was recently. Anyway, this will be part of the our other AI talks community sessions. But yeah, GitHub Action Workflows, and as we discussed, they have much better community support. So recently, I know some of you already had the opportunity to try these beta exams, but there's already some learning materials in Microsoft Learn where you can get your hands dirty with GitHub Actions Workflows, and these are also part of the AZ400 exam. So after covering the tools, it's time to covering some of the practices and what we can do in order to get these accelerated deployments in our enterprises. So, of course, DevOps practices is the first and most important thing, which also include consistent and repeatable deployments and policy visibility and deployments. Not sure if I have to spend any time of the DevOps practices, but in general, DevOps is combining development and IT operations teams and practices in order to shorten the system development lifecycle and to provide continuous delivery of high high qualified and bring high value to the end user by provide high value.
And also streamline the end result, because it's you have a verifiable end product every time. That's the same.
And in general, this is a culture which is integrated and breaking silos. In general, it's the modern mindset of how solutions should be delivered to the end client. So part of this is continuous integration, continuous delivery, continuous deployment, and of course, infrastructure as code. At least this is in the content of today's session. DevOps practices and in general, DevOps culture is a really huge topic that I'm sure that even 5, 6, or 10 sessions would not be enough to cover each of these for it. So we'll not go in details for that. It's just keep in mind that this is important part which you have to think about how you can implement some of these practices within your organization. As I mentioned, the focus should be on the breaking silos. We'll discuss this a bit later, and introduce this continuous integration practice, which involve developers merging their changes back to the main branch as often as possible. They were recently in LinkedIn one picture where they had Coca-Cola and Mentos, and they mentioned this is what happened when you not merging your branch to the main very often. And yeah, in general, this encourage the early detection of and quick resolution of bugs, security challenges, some quality caveats, etc. Continuous delivery, it's extension of the continuous integration by ensuring that you can release at any time. Of course, it involves the automation of the entire software release process. The tools that we discussed previously provide multiple options to have full control of that, to have the proper review gates. I don't want to boring you with such a stuff. Important part also is infrastructure as a code in modern enterprises. This is critical in order to have end-to-end optimized, let's say, organization. And because even that, if you have, for example, R&D teams which are strictly using CI/CD, but the infrastructure team is taking like several change requests at approval, manual implementation, and creation of the services, it's most probably it's not going to work well. We've discussed about the consistent and repeatable deployments. I just mentioned about the infrastructure as a code importance. But if you can remember one thing for consistent and repeatable deployments is that consistency is bringing confidence. So repeatability is bringing confidence, and confidence is bringing speed. When your team is able to repeatedly deploy something, they'll be much more confident comparing when they have to do this
once a month
or each time manually. Oh, they forgot how these steps are working. And at the end, when they are confident that they can deploy this easily, and every time they'll have the same result, so there'll be consistent deployment, you get the speed. So the main benefit of consistent and repeatable deployments is speed and quality. Just recalling back the previous slide, and also cost, because they don't have to reinvent the wheel each time when they have to do the same thing. Of course, you can have pretty good procedure, but someone again have to read them and remind yourself. When you do these consistent and repeatable deployments, you have the confidence to do them. Your team is not afraid. They can just click the button or somehow trigger it, and they're 100% sure that the result would be the same. They have this confidence. You have this speed, and at the end, reduce time to market. automation deployment process. As we mentioned, the tools which we discuss, they provide multiple ways of having automation in this in the entire life cycle. I don't want to boring you. The most important thing that if there's one thing that you can remember is that remember to focus on the entire system, not on the specific piece of the system. When you have challenges in the organization, where they have some, some challenges with the overall software development and release, identify each of the stages on the entire life cycle, identify how much time it takes for each of the stages, and focus on the stages which took most of the time, or the stages where there is some disconnection, on the stages that have the higher dependency. Don't go and focus on something which you will focus to optimize it locally, but it will not have a big impact on the global system. So automating deployment process is definitely a crucial thing that needs to be established in your organization, which actually will mitigate the manual deployment risks. I think we already touched multiple of these, but in general, we have higher failure rates, you have inconsistent deployment, because as I said, there's multiple people, we are all humans, we all make mistakes. So even if we've done this several times, we can, when we follow each of the steps, the chances to make mistake is much higher. So we can expect with manual deployments, one of the biggest risks is to have more failure rates. The other thing is, of course, we can do it at the same speed, for sure, compared to automatic deployment. So we're actually increasing our times to market. And in general, these risks can be easily mitigated by implementing automated deployments, and in general trying to establish the tooling, the processes, and the mindset in our organization of automated deployment process. You may ask what we should automate. We should automate everything that can be automated. So I will make a joke a bit, but even we can automate the people, right? With the new I'm kidding. But yeah, the majority of the services nowadays can be automated. You have pretty good APIs. Even in old systems, you can expose them through APIs. You can automate almost everything. So the entire creation of your cloud platform or your cloud solution can be automated with just one click of a button. So the request of creating your solution, your landing zone, which is your cloud platform, together with all the policies, all the processes established, it could happen with just one click. So almost everything could be automated. Here you can see some example of the tools that can help with different type of automation, tools that can help with monitoring of this automation, etc. Some documentation that you may find useful. There is a lot of documentation that you can follow in Microsoft websites. So, but yeah, I'll touch this a bit later. I think we already discussed the role of CI/CD pipelines, the ways which allows us and how this allows us to have in early stages detecting failure, do our testings, and make sure that our software is not vulnerable, etc. And also it's with the CD stage, we can have a full control of our deployment, including gates, approvals, etc. and of course secure and following our cloud platform policies, automated deployments. I think we already discussed about the role of Azure policies, but they allow us, as we mentioned, by deploying them at scale. It doesn't matter if it's in the code or using some of the tools like Defender for Cloud. They allow us to have automated compliance and make sure that we are compliant. They prevent any drifts from these configurations, and they ensure that we have consistent environment. As I mentioned previously in the security part, always try to start in the broadfield environments with the audit mode, just to first have good understanding of how your environment looks like. Then you can even implement this in some other modes if you'd like. So you can enforce them. But there is even one nice workbook called Compliance Over Time in the Defender for Cloud, where you can have a good reports how your compliance is changing. Shift left approach. We touched this several times in our conversation. In general, the main idea behind this is to detect the challenges and issue as early as possible. So it's important to have good testing, and at the beginning we can integrate and actually we can have policy checks in our initial steps within the pipeline, so the non-compliant resources would be identified even before we deployed them and have, for example, the pipeline failed, or at the end, if we are in audit mode, to have the pipeline in to have the environment and some alerts that we have non-compliant resources. This will also help. This approach also helps us to have less by fixing the challenges earlier. They will require much less rework because we don't have to wait multiple stages to pass, which they may have some dependencies, and at the end it may require more rework. So following this approach, we'll have less things to fix at the end, and at the end, this of course result in again faster time to market by detecting the issues earlier. How we can integrate the policies in our dev process? So we can integrate. We can start by integrating them in our pipelines, and this will, as I mentioned, probably will ensure that our policy checks are carried automatically every time when the deployment is triggered. Also, we can have even before that, like a policy evaluation. So we can have at each of the stages in our pipeline, if we're using multi-stage pipelines, which most probably we do. We can evaluate each of the stages, how compliant is with these policies, and of course we shall most probably leverage to the tools that we discussed earlier about all of these automation in order to make sure that we are compliant with the policies which we already established in our organization and don't have to have these challenges that I just mentioned of having failed deployments, someone to run the deployments again, looking why they are failing, etc., etc. Talking about that, it's really important to establish these processes and make sure that people are aware with these processes from the beginning. I touched the resources a bit, but as we discussed multiple times, Microsoft is doing a great job of providing multiple resources, multiple lanes, multiple ways of learning stuff.
Actually, the best job they have ever done as far as documentation goes.
Yeah, absolutely. So Microsoft Learn, I would say, is the best platform for learning the capabilities of comparing with any clouds. You have the ability to run sandboxes, to experiment, as totally for free. And you have this really nice and funny
up to date.
yeah, and these nice and funny scenarios where you can be like, like reading a book, interesting book, when there's some interesting thing happened, not only technical one.
At this point, I would not even suggest people to go to paid services for trainings.
Yeah.
For the Microsoft stuff, at least, there are plenty of all of the free options, along with some hands-on experience in an Azure tenant, will be absolutely sufficient for you to start.
Yeah, but remember, this was the case in the past, and I had this discussion multiple times. Shall we pay for courses, or live courses?
Or at least you should be really, well, if you're going to be paying for something, you should focus on specific things that come out of experience from the
exactly.
Otherwise, sort of the generic trainings that are for the exams,
Yeah.
they're not worth the money, at least for any.
Yes. So when you plan, okay, this is a bit off topic, but when you plan to go to live courses, it's definitely best to cover all of these before that. And when you go to the live courses, just ask the things and learn the things that you can.
Come with questions.
Comes with questions, come with things that you would like to learn based on the experience of the lecturer. As we touch online tutorials, Microsoft have for every single services, including deployment acceleration, pretty good repositories with things that you can implement on the fly. You have
the cloud adoption framework.
Exactly. You can deploy everything in the DevOps. You can have a full checklist of how your cloud adoption is going over time, including the governed part. And of course, community forums are also
ChatGPT.
Yeah, ChatGPT is definitely very good friend for your two-person community.
Especially now that it can go into the internet and check for you.
Yeah. So as we mentioned, however, it's not only technical part. There is a non-technical side of the entire deployment acceleration, I would say, discipline. And there is multiple things which you can do in order to improve overall deployment acceleration in your organization by providing multiple opportunities for people. So one of the things which may help pretty to improve the deployment acceleration is to build internal communities. It could be core technology groups. It could be like some different events, one per month. So it's important to encourage your team members to look for what's new, to what how the technology evolved, and to present these to the others, to have some nice discussion where this can be implemented, how this can be implemented, how this can improve our stuff. Because, for example, when there's one of these big events like Microsoft Ignite or the recently Microsoft Build event, it's great, for example, to give some time to your team to go there, to get all the updates from this, then sit down, have discussion. What was interesting for each of you, how this can be implemented, how these new things can improve us. This not only build new skills to your team, but providing new knowledge about the new services, but also improve your team members as persons because it improves their communication skills, their presentation skills, so they become better human, they become better collaborator with each other, which in the end streamline the processes and have impact of the deployment acceleration. So remember, your cloud platform, the cloud platform that you built is needs to be maintained. Of course, you're leveraging to the Microsoft evolution of the platform, but if your team does not evolve with the platform, keep in mind that your team will hold the evolution of progress of the Microsoft Cloud platform. So these internal communities are something which can help with that part. And as I said, to one way or another, have huge impact in the deployment acceleration that will reduce the time to market for your solution at the end. Also, you can, by saying internal communities, you can, it's good to find some time and budget to send people to these large events in order these people to bring some connections within the different, to get some experience from other organizations, how they implement this or that, what kind of techniques they have been using. So keep that in mind as well. As we discussed, this is really famous thing. You should try to break the traditional silos as much as possible to allow people to communicate, to encourage people to communicate between the team, to have this horizontal communications between the team. Of course, there's a lot of researches in that direction, and if you put a little bit more effort, you can have better control of that. There is one book called, and not book, I would say one framework called Team of Teams, where it's talking mostly about how you can structure your teams in order to deliver faster and streamline their product development in general. But what we've seen in the past is the silos are the main challenges for the accelerated deployments. The dependency of some teams which are not mature, that they're not going with the same speed as the other, is something which at the end holds the organization back. As we mentioned previously, if you does not evolve with the platform, you are holding back. It's the same situation. If one of the teams, which is the other teams are highly dependent, for example, infrastructure team, security team, does not evolve fast, it holds the other teams back. So local optimizations are good, but focus on the goal optimization. So trying to break the boundaries and make sure that the teams are working together and not in silos. Of course, it's this is also something which is highly neglected, I would say, in the large organization, but especially on the highly regulated one. They do not allow people to experiment. They do not provide them a good platform for experimentation. So things like Visual Studio benefits, having some process of how people can request these subscriptions, how you can have control of these subscriptions. It's really, really mandatory in order to these people to be able to easily get the platform where they can do their experimentation. Also think about the these preview features. Make sure that they are available in the cloud platform or subscriptions where you would like to allow your team members to experiment, because there's a lot of services which are in preview, but you can start including them and their functionality in your, for example, non-production environment to at the end to have huge advantage, competitive advantage. So when we're talking about experiments, think about one of the things that you can think about are sandboxes in Microsoft Learn, and mostly for large enterprises, Visual Studio subscription benefits part of the Visual Studio licenses, professional or enterprise. And yeah, based on our experience, technical and non-technical are going hands by hand. And unfortunately, I thought to say that the most commonly non-technical are bigger, provide a bigger challenge to the organizations to be resolved. But strangely, technical ones are also still on the table. So I still see large organization which really can't implement appropriate landing zone, which is following the best practices, which is fully automated. It's built by infrastructure as a code. It's secure, compliant, and scalable. So based on our experience, both recommendations for improving the deployment accelerations are equally important. And if you can remember one thing, is that don't forget the non-technical one. start with the technical one, but don't forget the non-technical one. Especially some of them can be pretty easily implemented. And yeah, I think that's it for today. It was a kind of short. I've been talking nonstop, so would be, yeah, all the time. So would be happy to hear any questions, anything that you can share or you would like to discuss.
Hi, I'm not sure if messages in the chat are received, but I had
so
no worries. Yeah, I got a favor, so yeah, really not sure. But anyway, regarding the certifications, can you share your opinion? Which are the biggest benefits of gaining such, considering the Microsoft ones, for example, let's say for solution architect, apart from knowledge, skills, and stuff like that? Does it help with like the career or anything else?
So yeah, about the certifications, Microsoft provided Solution Architect Expert certificate. And the biggest, if I hope that I get the question right, but the biggest benefit of having this certificate, or let's say Z400, which is focused on the DevOps practices and tools, the biggest benefit of that is that it's provide you a full visibility of the entire portfolio of Microsoft services, which can be used to solve different kind of challenges. I would say that it's a great certificate, especially Solution Architect Expert certification, because it does not go into details like the other exams where you have to do some hands-on, but gives you the knowledge which is required to be able to choose the right Microsoft services for the specific challenges of the users. You know, and the biggest benefit also is that usually people are focused on specific, let's say, set of services. They've been using specific set of services in their organization just because of the use case, and they are not aware of the other use cases, the other services, how they can be implemented. So in general, the certificates, and especially this one, provide you this better visibility of the full portfolio in the different domains. It could be AI domain, security, identity, pure infrastructure, networking, etc.
Yeah, and also certification gives you a sort of a boost in confidence because it allows you to it kind of forces you to explore more as you kind of do the certification. Maybe you don't understand, you still don't understand some of the things that are part of the exam overall, but that at least allows you to see that it's not that difficult as a topic. There are probably opportunities that I can use in my work, or maybe if I want to do this kind of job full time. So certification overall, it's not meant to secure you a job. It's not meant to give you the necessary, and that will be the end of it, like the learning experience. It's to me, certification is more the start than the end of the work there. So myself and Nikki, we do certifications just so we can keep our skills sharp in terms of what's going on, what are the different capabilities that are there, and like I said, it gives us some knowledge gaps. We feel some knowledge gaps that because you don't have the opportunity to be involved in every part of the cloud because it's so vast now. We want to do data maybe some point in specific parts of data, but it's not like we have it.
And at the end is the easiest way to challenge yourself, I would say. Another important thing that I think it's a good time to share is and to discuss is that what we see is that people really neglect the foundational certification like AZ900 or AI 900 or the other, let's say, AWS Cloud Practitioner, in general, the entry-level exams, especially for non-technical people. And these things, these exams are absolutely crucial, and we would say mandatory for project managers, product managers. I would say even CTOs and CIOs, right? Because, for example, AI 900, everybody in the organization, okay, the accountant, it could be somewhere at the end of the day, but everybody should be aware of what is possible, because how you can improve your way of working if you're not aware of what is available. I had this discussion with one of my friends in the past, and previous boss 10 years ago, who asked me why you're looking at that, because as we are not using it in the company, and at the end we start using it in the company and transform multiple data centers with this technology. But yeah, it's I hope that we've been able to answer.
And also, even the acquiring some of the certificates doesn't. It's most of the times it's free, especially for the fundamentals one.
Yeah.
So it's the only thing that's required is the level of effort by the person.
Yeah, and for example, Coursera certificates, which are highly focused on AI stuff, you can audit them for free, and you pay only if you want to have the badge for them.
Exactly.
So, yeah. I hope that answered your questions.
Yep. Thanks. I was curious to hear your opinions over this. And one more question, more related to the topic today. Do you have any observations how, considering the trendiness of AI, how AI can be used in the DevOps cycle? Considering that it might be a little bit controversial topic, because DevOps by itself automates, AI somehow also automates. So what is the common point in your opinion?
So yeah, I think that this is a much larger discussion, but
For sure.
yeah. But in general, we already see how AI is already helping to streamline our DevOps process by providing capabilities to the dev teams and helping their job by, for example, GitHub Copilot, and all of these copilots can do this. Also, maybe that's a good idea to have a session on that topic, because we can think about AI, how we can implement AI in each of the cycles of the general DevOps process. Because currently, you know that especially Microsoft, they're trying to implement AI and this overall integration between their in their big cloud platform. They're trying to implement it as fast as possible. So if we start looking at each of the phases, I'm sure that we can identify good use cases of how this can be streamlined by,
especially in the development process.
Development testing process, make sure that it's secure. For example, there's the majority of the services which are used in Azure and Azure DevOps.
Static analysis.
Everything behind the scene is right now. It has some touch of the AI. Sentinel, this Defender for DevOps stuff, all of these
they use AI in some capacity already.
It would be very interesting to think about and discuss how AI can streamline. So first of all, each part of the process, and to think how we can streamline the entire process. But yeah, this can be a good discussion. I would take this as a proposal for some of the names of our next session. And Jana, if you have anything that you would like to share in that direction, please feel free to join us next time.
Sure, I had some, so to say, interesting meeting with this topic, and exploring the use cases and capabilities of implementation of AI solutions within the DevOps and DevSecOps cycles. So yeah, we'll be curious to see, to hear also what you can prepare and
Perfect.
participate. Thanks.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you. So September, we'll try to.
And thank you for the questions, by the way.
Yeah, we'll contact you and we'll think about how we can discuss this topic. But yeah, great questions. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. If we don't have anything else, I guess we can close it off for this summer, I guess.
Yeah.
For the whole governance topic, we'll combine the videos into one big sort of a non-stop video that outlines all of the parts of the governance series. So it will be easier to kind of view, and we'll post it on the YouTube channel for everybody to leverage. Yes.
Yep.
And we're gonna come back in somewhere in the September, maybe October period, depending on what interesting topics we figure out what we're gonna do next. We'll probably dive into security again. We're just considering what's the next thing in line.
Yeah, we also get a good proposition from Yana, so definitely we'll consider that. In general, our plans were to dive deeply in the Defender suite because it's became pretty large right now. So there's multiple, and it's still not well understood from the organization or covered, or it's it's hard for people to encourage them that Microsoft can bring solid security solutions. But yeah, thank you all. Appreciate your time. Wish you a great summer, good moments, and yeah, enjoy, and
see you next time.
See you back in September, October.
Okay.
Okay.